Hey y'all, welcome back to the Book Stamp. My name is Kate, and today we're going to be talking about a subject near and dear to my heart, which is books that accurately reflect Appalachia. So, as you saw from the title of this video, these are books that I'm recommending instead of Hillbilly Elegy. Hillbilly Elegy by JD Vance was on the New York Times bestseller list for an ungodly amount of time, and really post the 2016 election was a book a lot of people read sort of as a way to understand Trump country, which there's a lot of problems. So we're not really going to hit the political implications of that, but just that the book Hillbilly Elegy is in no way, shape, or form an accurate reflection of Appalachia. First off, JD Vance is not from Appalachia, he's from Western Ohio. He says Appalachia, appa-LAY-sha, which nobody from the region says, and has historically been used as a way to insult Appalachians, to say it that way. And three, he takes his personal story about his family and uses it to make broad, sweeping generalizations about the entire region, which is a problem. You cannot look at your one niche family and make all of these generalizations. The movie is coming out soon, and I, along with a lot of other Appalachians, are extremely concerned about this movie presenting our culture and our families and our history just in a completely inaccurate light. So for those of you who are not super familiar or not from the United States at all, the Appalachian region of the US basically follows right along the Appalachian mountain range, which stretches from southern Georgia all the way to Maine. That's where the Appalachian Trail runs. And so a lot of times Appalachia gets confused with Southern, and while I am personally Southern and Appalachian because I come from Eastern Tennessee, someone who comes from Pennsylvania in the Appalachian region of Pennsylvania is not Southern. So first off, that's a distinction that is not made enough. And second, so really a lot of what defines Appalachia is the mountains. It's typically a very rural area, and it has been extorted historically for energy. So for West Virginia, Kentucky, that region, it has for a long time been coal, which is probably what most people think of when they think of Appalachia, is coal mining towns, the extortion of the land for coal resources, strip mining, company towns. My region of Appalachia, which is further down south, started with TVA and with nuclear power plants. So that's what we have a lot of down here, and I don't personally know as much about northern Appalachia, but a lot of it was historically coal mined. So hopefully you're already starting to see the distinctions between the region and how someone who grew up in Ohio cannot really speak on my experience in Tennessee. So instead, I'm going to recommend to you several books that you should read instead of Hillbilly Elegy to better have an understanding of the region. So there's going to be sort of three different segments. We're going to have our nonfiction recommendations, our fiction recommendations, and then our other recommendations. For our nonfiction section, we have What You're Getting Wrong About Appalachia. This was written almost in a response to Hillbilly Elegy. The author is from Knoxville, Tennessee, where I went to college, and it is a much more social justice text, but it is only 167 pages. I got it from my library. I'm about halfway through it right now. The author is a queer woman, and so it really talks about how the identities of queer people and people of color that have historically been erased from the Appalachian narrative. So it's definitely a really, really good read, and I strongly recommend it. The second book is Appalachian Reckoning, which is a response from the community to Hillbilly Elegy. So this is an anthology with essays from a lot of different writers about how they view Appalachia, what their rationale is. And there's, if you can't get a copy of this, there is a essay written on the Bitter Southerner website, which if you don't read the Bitter Southerner, you 100% should. They have amazing long form journalism pieces as well as storytelling, and it's just a amazing organization trying to recapture the narrative around Southern people. So I will link that down below so you can read that right now if you want to, but it is another way that the region has responded to the claims that JD Vance made about us. For fiction recommendations, one of the fiction writers that I absolutely love, one of my favorite writers of all time, is Silas House. He is from the Appalachian region in Kentucky and is a gay man, and so a lot of that is reflected in his writing, but he really treats Appalachia and the characters in his novels with such respect and beauty with them and how they process the things that happen to them. The first book I'm going to recommend is Southernmost, which this is his most recent publication, and it features a preacher from the Cumberland Plateau area of Tennessee, which is pretty much where I live currently, and essentially after he has a come to Jesus meeting about gay marriage, he loses his job as pastor of the church and basically flees with his son to Key West. So it's not really set in Appalachia, but the characters are deeply Appalachian characters, and sort of the growth that he has and the story is just so beautiful. I loved it so much. It's going to be one of my top 10 books of the year. The second book I'm going to recommend is either The Coal Tattoo, A Parchment of Leaves, or Clay's Quilt, which these are 3 books that are separate stories, but they all follow sort of the same family at different times. I just finished The Coal Tattoo and really, really loved it. So The Coal Tattoo in particular follows 2 sisters, Easter and Aneth, as they have lost both of their parents, and it follows them over a long time span through their marriages and divorces and children. And it's just such a beautiful, character-driven, slow-paced story that you just want to like fall into. So I highly recommend it as well. The other fiction book I'm going to recommend is Sugar Run by Mesha Marin, which this is a story set in West Virginia, and it follows our main character Jody after she gets out of prison and returns to her hometown in West Virginia, falls in love with another woman, so it's another gay story. And I think it's so important to tell stories about Appalachian people who have been erased from the main Beverly Hillbillies narrative. So I also strongly recommend this book as well. And then lastly, sort of in our other section, as I mentioned, the one and only queen of my heart, queen of my soul, Dolly Parton. Dolly Parton is from East Tennessee, same as me, and has been such an advocate for Appalachia for such a long time. She is one of my absolute favorite people on this earth. I would die for her. And I think looking at Appalachia through the lens of Dolly Parton has been one of the ways that I have really come to understand and love this area that I grew up in. And so I have a couple different recommendations. So first off, listen to her music, especially her older music. Like her old music and then her current music, because it has so many Appalachian influences. I will actually link my Dolly Parton Spotify playlist in the description, so please go check that out. And the way that she tells stories about the people and her upbringing, like Coat of Many Colors and Joshua and Applejack, it's just such a reflection of the culture with so much love that I really, really love it. So if you love Dolly and listen to her music, I would also recommend Dolly's America, the podcast, which was released this year, and it sort of is a lot of these really long form interviews with Dolly about her process of becoming famous and throughout her life. And it's just such a beautiful way to sort of look at how Dolly has influenced America and America has influenced her. It is so beautifully well done. I highly recommend it. And then lastly, the book that I'm currently reading right now is She Come by It Natural, Dolly Parton and the Women Who Lived Her Songs. So this is by Sarah Smarsh, and she released a lot of these, essentially released as long form essays a while ago, and she's compiled them all into this book. Another just way to love and appreciate Dolly Parton, which, you know, I think the whole world would be better if we all loved and appreciated Dolly a little bit more. So those are my initial recommendations, but right now I am reading a lot of Appalachian literature right now for various reasons. So I'll probably have an update to this video coming out soon, but I highly recommend that you do not read Hillbilly Elegy and read a lot of these books instead. Well, thanks for watching, y'all, and I'll see you later.